everybody, and welcome back to Always Right. I'm Chris Thomas.
Part two.
Part two. This is Terry. This is Raven, and we're on part two of our discussion of horrible Islamophobia. But we're back here. Last part we covered the patriarchy as well as peace and love versus violence and mayhem, and now we're going to be talking about two more hot button issues: LGBT rights as well as the horrors of white supremacy that supposedly plague our nation right now and how the different religions deal with that. So let's start with LGBT rights. The woke love LGBT rights because they think everything that anybody might want to do at any given moment is a right. They think there's a lot
They're
of
the only rights that matter.
Exactly. They're the only rights that matter. I mean, forget like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Literally, just whatever you want to do.
And we all know they seem to think there's about 5,000 other amendments written in invisible ink that we can't. The rest of us can't see. The constitutional scholars can't find them. The law professors can't find them. Well, I guess some of them can now. These woke professors.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, when you look at, you'd be surprised what you can find if you're just looking up your own ass. So.
Exactly. But none of us on this podcast are able to find any of these 5 bazillion amendments that are.
I can't find them.
There. I can't find them.
No, if you have this thing, I mean, I have my Constitution here, so if we need to do some research, I mean, I'm good to go. I can try and find them. I mean, you can tell it's well read, and I haven't located anything yet. So,
but we all seem to think that there's a right to get a doctor to mutilate your genitals. There's a right. There's a right to marriage.
To go into other people's spaces, to teach other people's children. You have the right to teach other people's children whatever you want.
You don't even have the right to be in the presence of other people's children, let alone to teach them.
And apparently the activists have successfully lobbied, as we talked about in an earlier podcast episode, the USA Boxing. You now have the right to beat the crap out of a woman.
And get paid for it.
And get paid for it, of course.
Make a living.
I mean, what are Muslims doing? They do it for free.
Exactly. And all these guys have been doing it, for nothing. But now you can literally make a career out of beating up women.
Exactly. Any Muslim men watching, this one's for you.
And we
you actually get paid for doing it now.
Yeah.
So one of the most kind of peculiar things we've seen in kind of our civil, I won't say civil discourse, and our not so civil discourse in society is the queers for Palestine.
Oh my gosh.
They love
chickens for KFC. Chickens for KFC.
Exactly.
So we oftentimes will criticize leftists for talking as if they know what's in everyone else's best interest. But I believe, without being too presumptuous, I know it's not in a gay person's best interest to be thrown off a rooftop. I don't think that's being arrogant.
Are you a doctor?
I'm about to say, I don't think you don't have a degree, so I don't know if I trust you.
I'm not sure I'm qualified, to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway.
How tall is the building? Okay.
Exactly. Is it at least 500 feet?
God. Typical conservative wants to tell everybody what to do.
Exactly. They're all about control and right-wing authoritative behavior. This is exactly why they want a theocracy, so that we can all submit to the Roman Empire.
Oh my God!
And the Roman Catholic
Church. Architect. God.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let's start actually with I want to start with kind of this boogeyman of Christian nationalism, because let's pretend in a society in a total hypothetical scenario that we literally do allow quote unquote Christian nationalism to take over, and that the church and its morality would guide U.S. law. What would that look like?
Submit to Rome.
I know, you love that. But what would that really look like realistically for gay people? Because the left thinks that the church specifically is out to get gay people. What would rights, quote unquote, for gay people look like in a true Christian nationalistic?
Well, I think you have to realize Christian nationalism is going to be restrained by the Constitution.
Yeah.
Right? The goal of Christian nationalism, people who call themselves that, is not to overturn the Constitution, right? They still honor the Constitution. They don't want to throw out the Constitution. So while there are Christians who oppose gay marriage,
they're not theocratic fascists like me.
Yes, or don't want gay marriage. Again, they're going to go through the legal channels to do it.
Exactly.
So
the two hot button
issues. If it's found. unconstitutional, which at this point it has been, there's really nothing they can do, because the goal is not to overturn, you know, it is to be law and order. So again,
Totally.
you're still going to go by the Constitution. Rights will still be protected then. Honestly, when it comes to anything else, I mean, it's going to be, are you a minor? You're still going to get the same things you get now with children should not be allowed to take hormones. Children should not be allowed to have surgeries and alter their gender. And parents should have rights over what their children learn and read.
And I want to talk about, even on before we get into the trans stuff, on the gay issue, I feel like there's two kind of hot button issues as it pertains to specifically homosexuality in society. And number one, as you already said, is marriage, and number two is adoption. Both of those things, though, are not constitutional rights. You don't have the right to have children.
Even for straight people, like no, like marriage is not right, nor is adoption right.
Right, nor is adoption right.
Nor is surrogacy, but that's a different conversation.
Yes, I do want to have that conversation. Maybe we can do that on its own podcast, though. But yeah, I think that's one of those things that, even if you said no gay adoption and no gay marriage at the federal level, there's nothing stopping two gay people from exercising their individual liberty to move into a house together. That and as far as
exactly.
no Christian, no matter even the most right-wing Christians, are not proposing bans on things like that.
Yeah, no, like I've met like some ridiculous like right-wing authoritative Christian, like I joke about being a Catholic nationalist, but like these people are actually serious, and it scares me because I'm like, I joke about being you, but like these people, like despite being like so authoritative and right-wing, like they, like although they're rare, they certainly exist, but like
that's the minority,
not even
right?
Exactly, yeah, they don't even
minority.
want things. They're not. Like, even though they're like, no gay marriage, ban it, ban gender transitions, they're not like, oh, if a gay couple moves in together, that should be illegal, and we should like force them out of the house and force them to live in separate houses.
There's it's not too. So my dad was a very devout Christian. He was a minister. He was old school, and even he never discussed. And his thing was, why can't you just do civil unions? Because in his mind, marriage is a religious ceremony.
Yeah.
Right. So his thing was, we'll do civil unions. But the other thing was, he never talked about punishing or banning people for being gay.
Exactly.
Never in his mind was that, should that be illegal? Should people be punished? Should people be banned? Should people be never said. And he was a Baptist minister for much of his life. And even he never said that. He was like, well, that's not the role of the church.
Exactly.
Right? And so even he did not want to make being gay illegal.
So Terry,
because he was like, well, that's not our place.
So, and also, Terry, I was about to say, your dad was old school, but not old school enough to be Catholic?
sorry. He was a real Christian. He was Baptist.
Oh, okay.
So
it's
Terry,
okay. You can have your heretical denomination.
So we know kind of what the role of the church is not with respect to the debate on homosexuality, but what is the role of the church in terms of dealing with gay individuals?
So I'm a Catholic. I believe in the authority of the church. So you might want the non-Catholic to answer that one.
Well, here's my thing. Nothing. I mean,
well, I guess let me rephrase the question. What does the Christian faith call on people to do if they know somebody or have a family member that's gay? Because
okay, that's an easier question.
The Wokies will say that you're supposed to hate them and condemn them, but what does Christianity say?
That would fall under love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Christians are not called on to do anything. If your neighbor is gay, or you love your neighbor as yourself, that's it. And your job is to be a Christian example. That doesn't mean preach at somebody. Follow the 10 Commandments and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what we're called on to do.
And also, Chris, like I was about to say, even from a Catholic perspective, because I believe in the church authority. Even from like an authoritative perspective, we do believe that the church has like the ability to get like not separation of church and state type way, but we believe its members should be like involved in getting legislation passed, get legislation passed to like make certain things that are sinful, illegal, like for example abortion, because basically what we believe is like even though like it's wrong, it's against the Bible, we don't hate the people. But even because it's a sin, we don't want it to be easy and accessible for people to do. Basically,
but thing is,
Mhm.
it's not even that. You can argue abortion from a human rights issue is one
Mhm.
person is making a decision for another. If you have two people who are gay and love each other and want to live together, you have two consenting adults decide to do
Mhm.
something. They're not harming each other. So again, that, there's no, again, it falls under love your neighbor as yourself. But I
Mhm.
agree with you. So my thing is, as a Christian, I would say I am not going to be, if I were gay, I would not be in a relationship with a woman. I would choose to be celibate because as a
Mhm.
Christian, I don't believe that's right.
Of course.
However, if you were not a Christian and you choose, or even if you are, you say you're a Christian and you choose to do that, that's between you and God. That's not covered in the 10 Commandments that way. It's covered between, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And so it's not our place to regulate other people's morality in the church, in the world. It's our place to regulate our own.
I do
See,
want to
oh
touch
no,
on.
because Chris, I know you saw the way my face lit up when she said.
Oh no,
He's trying to tell everybody else what to
I'm gonna
do.
say, yeah, I'm too much of an authoritative Catholic for that. Talking about no, Terry, I know, like, okay, you can like edit this part of the podcast, but like, I know you saw my face when she was like, "It's not our place to regulate the behavior of sinners in the church." I was like, oh no, I'm too Catholic for
It
that.
is our
Oh
place
no.
it's our place. It is our place to love, and it is we can say that's not of scripture, but it's God's
Mhm.
place to judge and to convict. We
so
cannot convict
Mhm.
someone of sin.
I want to touch on one of the most common misconceptions that I always see on the left, and
Mm-hmm.
um, there seems to be misunderstanding around the term "judge righteously"
Oh
or
yeah,
"judge not
Mm-hmm.
lest you be
that's
judged."
in
So I'd
John
love,
7:24. I know what you're talking about.
yeah. So I'd love one of you
Mm-hmm.
to
Mhm.
explain what that means because
Yeah,
I've had both
judging
Christians and
righteously. It's basically like, oh, is Chris frozen?
I don't think so.
Okay, but yeah, judging righteously, like it's essentially, and Terry, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm still like a baby Christian, only a Christian a few months, but yeah, basically, like righteous judgment. It's essentially like it's not like for example, it's not like, oh, what is she wearing? Or I guess like a more like common example would be like, ew, why is he dating another guy? Ew, that's an abomination. I'm gonna go over there and throw stones at him. Like, no, it's more so like, hey, so you're a Christian, you're actively in a homosexual relationship, I'm not going to judge you, everyone's different, we all sin, however, the Bible does not approve of that kind of relationship, and the way you were living is not, a lifestyle that God approves of. Like, that would be more so like righteous judgment, like not so much being hateful about it, but
And
more so,
keep in
laying the person
mind,
no.
righteous judgment is for other Christians. It's
Mm-hmm.
not for people who are not Christians,
Oh, yeah,
right?
no, it's not.
Keep in
It's
mind,
for other
as a
Christians.
Christian, right,
Mhm.
and you have chosen to follow the Bible, right?
Exactly, yeah, because,
So
yeah,
Raven's a
yeah.
Christian. He's chosen to follow the Bible. I've chosen to follow the
Mm.
Bible. Chris has chosen to go to hell.
Yeah. And you've
So
chosen to go to
Raven
purgatory because
is
you reject Christ's one true apostolic church.
right. So, but if I see Raven doing something that we know, right? If he's
Mm-hmm.
lying or stealing, we'll take something from the 10 Commandments, then
Mm-hmm.
I can go to Raven and say, Raven, you and I believe the same thing. And, God does not want you to do this. Can we pray together? Can you
Yeah.
seek forgiveness? How can you get on the right path?
Mm-hmm.
However, if I see Chris doing something that is in the Bible, I wouldn't go to Chris and say, hey, God doesn't want you to do that or blah,
Mm-hmm.
because God can convict. So righteous
Yeah.
judgment is for people who have chosen to follow Christ and live that example because
Exactly.
we are accountable to be an example
Mm-hmm.
to the
Yeah,
world.
Terry, that's why I gave the
Right.
example, like a person that's, already, calls themselves a Christian and, is already in the faith, but, they're living like a homosexual lifestyle, biblically. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I should say something about that.
So
But
would you
again,
say
righteous judgment
Mm-hmm.
is for Christians.
so
Only
from a
for Christians.
real Christian standpoint, you would righteously guide and judge
Mm-hmm.
another Christian, and for if it was a gay atheist or even just an atheist, because
Mm-hmm.
you would pray for them. You would pray in private for them. Is that would you say
Exactly.
that's
Of course.
accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would pray for them and you would in your role is to show God's love always. But your goal is not that you're going to hell and you're a sinner. Look, they don't know scripture. God hasn't spoken to their heart.
Exactly.
That all they see that is you being hateful. And I'm not saying that Christians are great at this, but scripturally, our job is to love our neighbor as ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and judge each other in a righteous and loving way. But it is not to go out and hunt down atheists or anybody else and judge them.
And
So
burn them at the
I
stake.
think what we see is there's so much opposition to this mentality from the left because the left views anything that's not overt proactive affirmation, they take that as hate. So even tolerance they
Mm-hmm.
view as not sufficient. Tolerance and
No,
acceptance are no longer sufficient things anymore
Mm-hmm.
on the left.
no. It's you have to
Am I
accept and
frozen?
affirm and agree.
Exactly. It's not just
And
tolerance and acceptance; it's affirmation and agreement.
yes,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's going out of your way to do so. It's not even like you have to be
hmm
outspokenly affirmative. And I think
yes,
Yeah.
they frown on really anything that doesn't do that. And so of course
hmm
Christianity isn't going to affirm. It affirms a lot of things, but it's not going to affirm the same exact things you want it to affirm
Nope.
as a woke
no,
lefty. And I think that's the problem they have with it. So apparently, though, and so I guess this brings back to kind of Queers for Palestine. It's confusing then why they're so pro Palestine.
Mhm.
And so, Raven, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about, from your research, how
Mhm.
do they deal with the gays?
Well,
well, hey,
Palestine.
if you're, I do have a question. If you're not a Muslim, do they just keep things to themselves and not judge you? Is that how that works with them?
So the interesting thing is, people will point out that Palestine. There are Jews and Christians in Palestine. To which I would say, yeah, you're right. There are Jews and Christians, but
Not in Gaza.
not in
Not in
Gaza.
Gaza.
No, not in Gaza.
Well, there's a few Christians, but there's no Jews in Gaza,
There's
other than the
not.
IDF right now.
hmm But yeah, no, because they'll talk about how there's Jews and Christians in Palestine. I'm just like, so do you mean like the West Bank? To which they would say, yeah, and I'm like, okay, so how do you think they're treated there? That's the important question, because you've acknowledged that they're
hmm
there, but how do you think they're treated? Do you think like they're warm and welcomed, like, oh yeah, you're a Christian, I'm a Muslim, it's okay to agree to disagree, even though Muslims are the majority, and you know how that goes. So I'm like, so do you think they're like treated with respect, or just a question?
No, and
Oh, you're asking.
well, and
Oh
also
yeah.
you look
Mhm.
at the Jewish and Christian populations in Muslim countries.
Well, actually,
They continually dwindle.
Raven,
Mhm.
there's an actual verse you did send me. I'll read
Oh
it.
yeah, feel free to pull it up.
Um,
But yeah, while he pulls that up, how Jews are treated in like Jews specifically, how they are treated in Palestine, it's not well. They are not treated with respect. They are not treated kindly. They are disrespected. They're spat on. It's absolutely disgusting.
hmm
so here, a
hmm
couple of the Quran verses you sent me were number
Mhm.
one, Allah cursed Jews and Christians. Number two, Allah turns many Jews into apes and pigs, so
Oh
dehumanize
yeah, if
them.
you see that, there are Jews with like there's like synagogues that have like pig painted on it.
Yeah, I believe it. And then number three, Jews worse than Christians.
Oh yeah, Terry, they're worse. They're worse. That's why they want to kill Jews first and then I don't know if they have to do it in a specific order, but they want to kill Jews first and then Christians.
And
I
then
don't know
number four,
how picky they are about it.
most Jews and Christians perverted transgressors.
Yeah, we're perverted
That's how
trans.
they feel. That's how they feel about the two major religions that exist other than themselves.
Well, now here you go. Woke people agree with them on that.
They do.
That's true.
Think
See,
woke
we
people
keep
agree with
cracking
that.
the code, Terry. Good
We keep
work.
cracking the code.
And
Yeah.
the interesting thing is, in the West Bank, like specifically, I have seen the way they treat Christians. They're not nice to them, and it's so weird because I see the way like they disrespect and basically blaspheme Jesus in the Trinity. And basically, what they'll say is, Terry, I had a good laugh at this one. I just sent you this comment because I was dying. This Muslim told me that Muslims love Jesus more than Christians.
Well, considering they want to believe he's a Muslim and he's not, I'm sure they think that. But I
Exactly.
think it's not just when you look at the West Bank. If we look in Nigeria, there has been for the last, I think it's 7 or 8 years, Christians are being slaughtered
Yeah.
literally by the thousands by
And also,
Muslims there.
Terry,
And
them believing that Jesus is a Muslim, that's contradictory to what their own doctrine teaches because Muhammad was the first Muslim. Jesus existed before Muhammad.
correct. Yeah, many years, yes.
Yeah, long time.
But you also have to look. If we look, I think it was in Lebanon where the Coptic Christians were slaughtered by radical Muslims. So Christians are literally being slaughtered right now, just for being Christians.
Yeah.
And of course, we're well aware of the other things that are going on
Christianity
in
is the most
Israel.
persecuted religion. I don't know if I sent Chris the numbers on that, but it's very easy to find.
Yeah. Yes, we are. Christianity is the most persecuted
Mhm.
religion in the world.
Like worldwide, you're more likely to be killed for wearing a cross than wearing a pride flag. So
And honestly, and I don't know, but I'm not aware of any country where, and I'm not saying I'm right, where Muslims are persecuted the way that Christians are. I'm not aware of. Now, I'm not saying Arabs. Arabs are You have the civil war in Yemen. You have the Kurds who are being attacked. But
Maybe
I'm not
like
aware
certain
of
Muslims in China.
Muslims be the Uyghurs. You're right. The
Yeah.
Uyghurs is a very small Muslim population that is being ethnically cleansed there. But in all the other countries in the world, I'm not aware of where Muslims are targeted
Yeah.
and persecuted for their faith the way that Christians are.
So going.
So, I mean, it is true. Now, you hear Muslims tell it that's not the way it is, but,
That's
actual statistics show differently.
So if we look at legislatively
100%.
what this
So,
means.
um,
So I was just gonna say, if we look at legislatively what this means in these different civilizations or in these different regions of the world, what are the legal consequences for being gay in these countries?
well.
in this country, none.
Oh, but do you mean America? Or do you mean like in Muslim countries? In America, none.
None. And
In Mu-
even if America became a Christian nationalist country, the consequences for being gay would be
It would
none.
still be none.
exactly.
But
I mean, like I
get
said,
that-
assuming like and like although I joke about the Catholic Church like taking over America, if it did actually happen, like at worst, like gay marriage would be illegal. Like that's about like the worst. And adoption
Well,
and gay
There's
adoption. And gay adoption.
there's nothing more deadly and painful to a leftist than not getting actively affirmed. So I guess that is the punishment.
Yeah.
Is
That is-
you won't have
Mhm.
is you'll only have
Mhm.
you won't have 100% of people actively affirming you. Maybe it would be 60%. But I guess
that okay, so that is the crime.
That's
There
the
would
punishment.
not be constant affirmation of your delusion. Yeah, that could happen.
Because I've talked to Terry about this. Terry knows like how I feel about like same sex marriage, but I don't care. I don't think it should be illegal. Same with same sex couples adopting or donating blood.
I don't care.
Yeah, like
it's
I
I
obviously disagree with it, but like I'm not gonna be like some theocratic fascist. I know I'm not a theocratic fascist. Shocking.
Yeah.
But I'm
no,
not that passes
yeah,
like
that to me falls under legal. And again, in the New Testament, God's law is separate from legal law.
yeah. So
my main legal priority when it comes to adoption is that no adoption agency that's faith-based should have to violate their conscience to adopt to a gay
yes,
couple.
I agree with that.
I feel extremely strongly about that. And then
Yeah.
the rest I'm fine with local jurisdictions making their decisions.
Yeah. I mean, that's, that falls under that falls under states' rights and how people vote. And so I'm not concerned. Now, so I guess the flip side of the question is that what are the legal, now, if we became an Islamist nationalist state, then that would change for gay people then, right? Freedom fighters.
Actually, Terry, I think if we became an Islamic like nationalist state, I think gay people would be celebrated by being taken to the top of buildings.
Oh, that's why it's cool. But carried to the top of buildings.
So in other words, Raven, they'd be able to get all the way to the top for a short time.
Yes, very short time. Well, I mean, I think we can look at what happens in Iran, which is a very Islamist nationalist state.
Terry, talking about
and,
Iran,
when
I saw a video I remember when I saw a video of a gay man being thrown off a building in Iran, it was just like shocking. Like it was jaw dropping to me. It was like this was even before I was a Christian. This was one of the moments that made me go, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm done like being like as like quiet about Islam because this is an issue. What happened was
you have to figure it's not so. I mean, you have to look at it in two ways.
Mhm.
One, if you are gay in Iran, you can be executed by the government and you can be put in prison by the government. But also keep in mind, if you were a gay person who is murdered in Iran, nobody cares.
They
These
don't.
people are not arrested. These people are not shunned. Nobody speaks for you. Nobody cares. There's no justice
There's
for
not.
hate crimes over there. There's no justice when people who are members of the LGBTQ community are killed. That is considered a community service. So it's not just that the government will persecute you, it's that they turn a blind eye to other persecution of you. There's no safety there.
But yeah, also, I was going to add on to it. I was basically going to say, like, the worst part about it for me is, like, this is the part that shocked me. Like, finding out that basically, like, that video that's released of that gay man being thrown off a building in Iran. Basically, once the Iranian government, they basically released a statement saying, yeah, we did that. He deserved it. He defiled Allah. I mean, we're doing it for Allah's glory. And I was like... But yeah, Terry, while he remembers that, I was gonna say this really weird thing to me. I was having a conversation with a Muslim, right? They were saying that Christianity has pagan roots, and I'm just like, this is literally the definition of every accusation is a confession because Islam has pagan roots. Muhammad was pagan before he was the first Muslim.
Yeah.
And, another interesting thing, a lot of people try to compare, because I used to be pagan. A lot of people try to compare the concept of the Trinity to like the triple moon goddess, which is a pagan belief. And I'm just like, so you would be right if the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit were all the same. They're not all the same. They're all God.
They're not all the same.
Let's say because oh, sorry, I was saying because
Go
in the
ahead.
case of the triple moon goddess, the maiden is the crone, and the crone is the maiden, and the maiden is the the mother, and yeah, they're all the same, just different stages. That's not how the Trinity works. So no, not a pagan.
Chris, when you were talking about language, one of the things that is different between when you look at Islam and Christianity and dealing with the LGBTQ community is the Bible addresses behavior. The
Yes.
Quran dehumanizes the person.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the difference. Because
Yeah,
no,
their issue is the person, not the behavior. It's the person, whereas Christianity addresses the behavior, and that's
Like-
very different.
exactly.
That's
Like for example,
very
Terry,
different.
and like there are certain words that are used, but the words aren't attempted to be used in a dehumanizing manner. Granted, people that are like Bible thumpers, they call them, they might take the words and use them as an insulting manner because they're biblical, but in context, those words are not insulting. They're like accurate. Like for example,
Chris was talking about
if I
how
steal,
the
I'm a
Quran
thief.
speaks
I'm a
about
thief.
people and calling
Mhm.
when they refer to
Yeah.
Jewish people as pigs, they're actually dehumanizing a person. The Bible
Exactly.
speaks to behavior, not to calling people names or dehumanizing them,
The
and that's
Bible
very
uses,
different.
from what I've seen of the Bible, it uses much more descriptive language in terms of adjectives to describe certain deeds and certain behaviors, but it's not labeling a group as something subhuman.
Correct.
Like for
Correct.
example, Chris, there is certain terminology used with, like we said before, the terminology is not meant to be insulting. It's meant to be, accurate. It describes like what the person's doing. Like for example, you see words like sodomite, for example. I'm like, well, people who do sodomy are called like people who steal are thieves. They committed sodomy. They're sodomites. It's not insulting. It's accurate.
Somebody who changes their behavior and ceases that, then would no longer be a sodomite.
Correct.
Exactly. They know. Exactly.
Correct. Whereas in when you're talking about with Islam, if you refer to a Jewish person as a pig, that's not something they can't stop being Jewish.
And plus,
right?
like even that,
well,
because I believe. Oh, my bad. Sorry, you can go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
The thing that you sent over, Raven, also shows that that it says Allah cursed these groups of people, like basically from the beginning. So no matter what they do, in the eyes of Allah, they're worthless.
And also a weird thing, Chris, this is a weird thing to me. Terry, I studied the Quran a bit, right? I haven't read the whole thing, so like I said, don't attack me if I get some things wrong or I'm ignorant to some things. But to my knowledge, like unless I'm misinterpreting it, because I'm assuming you studied the Quran as well, from what I'm understanding, it teaches like at least some form, depending on how you interpret it, like some form of predestination. So I'm like, wait, so how is it like? So if it's predestination, then how is it that these people are just cursed? Like they don't choose that; they're literally just cursed because Allah is not like choosing them.
Yeah. Islam is, I don't understand, but I think also I would point out that in Christianity, the door is open for everybody.
Well, unless you're a Calvinist, but yeah, I mean, I think Calvinists are heretics.
That's not what the Bible says.
Yeah, it's not. Right? I think Calvinists are heretics, but yeah, that's what they believe.
But you can't. The door is open to everyone, regardless of what you have done. Nobody is beyond the reach of redemption and of God's love. Whereas Islam teaches these are people who were cursed, and beyond that, Christianity says there is no one beyond the reach of God's love and forgiveness and redemption at any time. And so, again, and again, this puzzles me about woke people. I understand them wanting to judge people, but the idea that people cannot make a change in their life, that there can't be redemption, or that there is a group of people who were cursed when they want everybody to be accepted, or they claim they do, is counterintuitive to what they're saying.
And Chris, it's so weird because it's like in regards to these people, like for example, Jews, that's an ethno-religion. It's a religion and an ethnicity. Like I can be a Jew and be a Christian, be a pagan, be a Muslim. Well, maybe not that one, but yeah, you know what I mean. I could be any religion, also be a Jew, but it's like I can't stop being black no more than someone can't stop being a Jew.
And
So
the
like
other
these people
thing,
are cursed. Like there's nothing they can do. Like they're like, and remember, Terry, to my knowledge, Islam does not make the distinction between the religion and the ethnicity. You could be ethnically Jewish, you're
No,
still bad.
no.
the other thing I'll say is, the lefties might say, well, God curses humans, or God unleashed plagues, but those were in response, if I'm understanding, to very specific things that those people in those populations were doing.
Correct.
And the Bible makes it
That was
abundantly.
that was a
Maybe that's what
judgment of
COVID-19 was
behavior.
from: sexual immorality.
No. That's that is a judgment on behavior.
Yeah,
That is not a judgment on this person exists and I am judging them.
Exactly.
This person has done these things and now justice and judgment must come.
Yeah, God did
That's
not
very
say like
different.
these people of this race or ethnicity are pigs, they're disgusting, they're animals. I'm gonna curse
Correct.
them because I hate them.
Correct.
exactly.
It was their actions.
So
So as we
Yes.
talk about kind of categories of people, I want to move on to the final, most juicy topic, perhaps the juiciest topic, which is race, because the woke Marxist left is obsessed with race, absolutely obsessed. Everything is racial, and
oh my God.
Isn't it?
yeah, I mean, I was just having interactions with people about how Martin Luther King would be ashamed of what's going on today. This is totally.
Oh no, remember
totally
that girl that told us that skin color is what matters? Okay, yeah, Martin Luther King would be so
matters,
proud
yeah.
of that.
Yeah, and I've seen leftists literally say we can't have a colorblind society. Even if we wanted to, we can't. They say it's not a noble cause anymore. Martin Luther King, his dream was of a colorblind society.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
was.
dream he had. So it's totally the antithesis. And we think, okay, Christians, for whatever reason, they view as hateful and racist. They'll literally say Christians are racist, and usually they have some gobbledygook about slavery and how slave owners were Christian and they forced black people.
Well, slave owners were Protestants.
I know, so
Well,
they're not
here-
real Christians. I get it.
Well, here's the thing. They refer to Christianity as a white man's religion, but Christianity was born in the Middle East,
Yeah.
then went through Africa and came to Europe. Again, most
Yep.
people know the Ethiopian Bible is one of the oldest and actually most accurate translations because of its age. So
Yeah.
Christianity is not a white man's religion.
Yeah.
It is a Middle Eastern religion
It is.
that traveled through Africa and then to Europe,
So we've
and
talked-
spread from there.
So we've talked already a bit about how Islam views other religions and cultures, such as Christianity and Judaism. Is there
You know-
any...
Oh, my bad. But yeah, Terry, adding on to what you said, it's so weird to me because people have tried to flip it on me before. Because like at first I'm like, well, Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe, and they're like, oh, well then you're a Catholic. That's a white man's religion. I'm like, well, no, not even, because Catholicism existed prior to Roman Catholicism. It's called Roman Catholicism because the Catholic Church established itself in Rome. It existed before then, darling, and it didn't originally exist in Europe.
Correct. Yeah, it is not it is as Middle Eastern as Islam is.
Yeah, it is.
And the difference is it spread through Africa through missionary travels. It did not spread through Africa through forced colonization and threat of death.
Oh yeah, that's actually how Islam spread through Africa.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
That's how Islam spread.
I've always thought that the whole argument, well, ever since I was a conservative, I thought this. When I was a liberal, I agreed with this. When they would say I've seen videos even online and people saying to black people, "You're only a Christian because your family members must have been slaves." I actually think it's an extremely demeaning thing to say because it's saying you can't think for yourself, and this is kind of a common
Yes.
theme with the left. There's no way that the beliefs that you have very passionately and very sincerely, there's no way that those are real. You're just too stupid to see that they were implanted unjustly there. And and these people, they don't bother to ask, hey, what is it that made you find your faith? Or were you always Christian? Were you something like, they don't care to ask. They start with the presupposition that you're too stupid to have your own.
Terry, remember that that pro pally chick that was in my comments under that video of me saying, I'm gonna grow up and be an astronaut. Yeah, that one. When she was there, she made a video response to me and she said that me being a Christian and being black is Stockholm syndrome. So, so apparently,
Okay.
and you should see my sarcasm with Soul in the comments, because I was like, yeah, Soul. Apparently, yeah, no, because I was Catholic at this point. I'm like, apparently, I'm practicing the religion of my Protestant slave owners. It's okay.
And well, and you know what kills me is they talk about Christianity and slavery. And again, this goes back to, we always want to judge what people used to do by how we live today. So slavery
Mhm.
was very common in the ancient world,
It
right?
was.
But it was Quakers in America who were one of the people who started ending slavery. And,
Mhm.
Quakers are Christians
Mhm.
and believe in the Bible. But the thing is, Islam practiced slavery for much longer, right?
Yeah.
They had 1,400 years of the African slave trade. That was really no different. Many people died. It was a journey across the desert. There was some on the ocean. Many people died. But not only that, they castrated every male slave because they did not want families or ties or proliferation of another culture or race in Islam, because to them, uh, they view Africans or black people as subhuman.
Oh,
They
yeah, they
don't
do.
consider them, yeah, they don't consider them to be human beings.
Same
And
with black
so
dogs. Apparently, they don't like the color black.
they don't like dogs at all. But
Yeah, they don't.
they actually, well, and Palestine's a perfect example. Is the neighborhood there where their black citizens live is called Abid, and that is the word for slave or servant in Islam.
Hmm.
And so they very much look down on Africans and black people as less than, and refer to them as monkeys or apes or dogs.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons they castrated the males, is they did not want, they viewed it as they did not want reproduction of these animals to take over in their society.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, while slavery is horrible in the United States, we did not castrate people. And
Hmm.
there has become
Oh,
a
yeah, Terry. Remember,
Maybe
like
hold on.
this.
Maybe if we did castrate people, the left would like slavery.
Yeah.
well, then they would say it was all transgender and it would be
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Oh, and
then we're
also,
good to
Terry,
go.
remember, according to the leftists in my comments section, of course we couldn't have castrated slaves in America because apparently slaves were bred like dogs, which is why abortion's okay. I mean, you can ask her. I'll send her your comment after the podcast. You can have a lovely conversation with her, I'm sure.
I already got an account banned today. I'm good. But yeah, there is, and I actually don't know how. Now, I do know that when slavery was openly practiced in the Middle East, that blonde European women were the preferred harem slave for many of the sheiks and mullahs and wealthy men there. That they liked, it was some type of status symbol to have blonde white women in your harem. There was one of the highest selling, high valued sex slaves was blonde European women.
Hmm.
Lucky us. Of course,
Yeah,
they were
lucky you
brought in the
guys.
harem and used. Yeah. So, but I don't know how Muslims feel about white men.
Yeah, I'm not
I
quite sure about that
actually,
one either. I didn't like quite look into that one. I was more focusing on like their views towards like same-sex relations and their marital relations.
Here's the thing: we do know though that they hate Western civilization.
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely
So
100%.
that I think is
Mhm.
is the beginning of the
I
answer
mean,
to.
so do I, but like not for the same reasons that they do.
So
Well,
I
and
think
the thing is, I know that one of the things is America is viewed as the great Satan, um, and so I know Western men are not viewed as being as strong because they don't run their families the same way, and Western women are viewed as being very loose morally. It's assumed that
Hmm.
we are, sluts.
Exactly. I
So
mean, from the Muslim perspective, apparently the woman should, be in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant, sleeping over the stove for her husband. Shouldn't leave the house without being fully covered because obviously, how dare she show her face? She might as well be ass naked, ugh,
mhm.
whore. But and the husband should obviously be in control of the household. He should be a cruel, homicidal dictator who's willing to murder his wife and daughter if they step out of line even
they
slightly.
they do view Western civilization as weak. They do view
Hmm.
they view them as weak. I know my dad said that was an issue when he lived in Turkey when he was in the service, is that he said if you did anything, they always wanted to get in a fight with the American GIs and prove their manhood. And my dad said he would laugh because my dad was 6'5". And he said, I have guys who were 5'8" wanting to get in a fight with me. I was like, dude, I can't fight you. I'm in the service and I would hurt you. So, but they do view Western civilization as weak. And he said one of the conversations he had when he was in Turkey is they would always say they didn't understand the United States because if they had the kind of military power that we had, they would take over the world.
So I think
Yeah, they would.
I think this is beginning to kind of uncover the overarching question we had at the beginning of part one of this conversation, which was why is there a double standard? And I think, to me, the key lies in this hatred of Western civilization, because there's nothing that the leftists hate more than Western civilization, because we're evil white devil colonizers. And at the end of the
Including
day,
you and me, apparently.
Exactly. So, and yeah, I guess anybody who's dark-skinned and loves America is a sympathizer to colonizers or an
I
accomplice.
mean, I've been called a Ku Klux Klan sympathizer, so.
Well, they have Stockholm syndrome. What I don't understand though, when you look at race, one of the things they complain about is colonization. But the Arabs were major and still are major colonizers.
Yeah.
You're talking about coming from the Arabian Peninsula, which isn't that big, to taking over the entire Middle East and North Africa, and at one point parts of Europe. And
I mean, mind you, at one point, like,
colonized,
the Middle East was like primarily dominated by, you know, Jews and Christians, and now like most people when they hear Middle East, like the religion they think of is Islam. So, you know, that just goes to show like.
Well, you have to look. Egypt was a Christian country. Lebanon was a Christian country, and they are not now. They are predominantly Muslim. North Africa was mostly Christian. That is now predominantly Muslim, and the language, they redo the language. The language is Arabic or Farsi. The religion becomes Islam, and everything is converted. And they are some of the largest and most violent colonizers. When the Muslims colonized India, they killed 80 million people.
Yeah.
80 million people on the subcontinent. You're talking about changing the world, and yet you're going to yell at, at everybody else. And again, is it just come down to people with brown skin? They can do whatever they want for woke people?
Apparently, yeah.
I really literally think that's the hypothesis, because it's all, I think, with this new kind of cultural Marxism we have, that Marxism was originally based on class, and race has now replaced class, or it's at least become as important as class to these new Marxists that we have in America. And so I think everything becomes a black-white issue, and if you're aligned with the dark-skinned people, you're justified morally to do whatever atrocity that would justify the means to their end.
But again, this is just racism against a different group of people.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, this is still racism. This is still judging people on race. This is still categorizing people by race. This is still diminishing people by race. This is no different. This is still wanting to oppress people by race, because
that's why
you're
they
saying,
come up. They do the mental gymnastics. I mean, you've heard them say, you can't be racist against black people. Oppressors can't be oppressed. I mean,
which is weird, because I'm like, especially when, like, in the terms of the oppressors can't be oppressed arguments, even weirder when their argument is the majority can't. Sorry, a minority can't be oppressed. I'm like, white people are like 16% of the world's population.
I meant to say you can't be racist against
I'm
white
like,
people.
so and also, like, Chris, another thing which is like so lost to me, this was my original hypothesis, but after like analyzing it, I was like, yeah, no, that actually doesn't hold up. See, my original hypothesis was, because of 9/11, like, Muslims sort of became seen as like, like victims, so now like they're off limits. But I was like, no, actually, that hypothesis doesn't work because of the Holocaust, and they're still perfectly willing to yell kill all Jews at college campuses. So clearly it's not that. So So what's the deal? Like, seriously, what is the deal there?
I wonder. I mean, woke people, to me, and I don't know, they seem quite unhappy and miserable. So I feel like with this pro-Pally thing, I think they're very sincere, and they think that they're doing something good by supporting Hamas and hating. But I feel like there's a search for purpose, right? Yeah. And so to be able to say, I'm a good person because I'm standing up for someone I don't have to, who's traditionally oppressed. Is that their new religion? Is that their form of
Mhm.
redemption and
And the weird
forgiveness?
thing is, I'm just like historically oppressed. Where like they've mostly been the oppressors.
I'd also like to address Raven your Holocaust comment because
Mhm.
I think there's a phenomenon simultaneously with what Terry just said, which is completely correct about the need for purpose and feeling good. But what's
Mhm.
simultaneously occurring is I think this Gen Z is the first generation that actively says, I don't give a shit about what my parents went through and what their lives are like. Because
Yeah.
my parents are on the older side because they adopted me kind of late in life in
Mhm.
the early 40s.
Oh,
But
well, remember you were stolen from your
I
home.
was human trafficked. I forgot
Yeah,
to
you
say
were
You
that.
were
human
human
trafficked from
traffic. Yeah.
your home.
But
Yeah.
so my parents were World War II veterans, and my parents, even
Mm-hmm.
though they're
Mhm.
not as liberal as they were, but
Well, not your parents. Remember, you're
my
traffickers.
abductors, yes.
Yeah, your
So they
abductors.
so but they had to have tremendous respect for their
Mm-hmm.
parents. And I've noticed and I have a couple cousins. I have one cousin that's in her mid 30s, and she has tremendous respect for her parents who are kind of in their early 60s. But now I feel like we have a generation now that basically says, fuck you to their parents. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what you went through. And because of that, we have, I think, the largest values gap generationally that we've ever had. Because
Mhm.
there's no desire of Gen Z, obviously not you, Raven, but a lot
Yeah,
of Gen Z,
I'm a good one. I'm one of the good ones.
exactly, to learn anything about the people that are in the generation ahead of them. And so I think we find, number one, I think that the World War II
Mhm.
veterans are dying off. So there's less and less people that are young that have
Mhm.
grandparents that fought in
Mm-hmm.
World War II. I actually have grandparents
And,
that fought in
Chris,
World War II.
talking about like
Yeah.
the generational gap, it's like a weird thing. It's like a little weird trend I noticed. Maybe it's because like teenagers are rebellious, but it's like in my case, it's like I noticed like a lot of like kids that are like around my age. I know that are like really like liberal and woke.
Hmm.
Their parents like low key, like no disrespect to my mom and dad. I love you guys. You guys brought me into this world, but like I would be fine if we swapped parents because I saw that American flag. I saw that Trump 2024 shirt your dad was wearing. I saw that Let's Go Brandon thing on your car. I was like, you know what? Can we swap parents? I'd be fine with that actually. You could have the pride flag that's in my closet that says "Make America Gay Again." You can have it. It's yours. But it's funny because
I,
I'm like, because it's like they have such conservative parents, but they are so woke and liberal. Then I'm the exact opposite. I have like, my dad's a socialist, my mom's like a raging leftist, and then you have me. So I'm like, it's like the exact
it's
opposite. My
always
parents are so,
rebellion. It's
yeah,
always,
it's
you know,
just rebellion.
Chris. I think you're right. I think there's that disconnect. And I remember I was talking to my dad, and I was very close to my grandparents. I was very lucky to be close to them. And I had my grandmother up until my late 40s. And one of the things I realized about them is they were survivors, right? They
Yeah.
didn't. If I'd sat down and asked my grandfather, "Hey, are you happy with your life?" He'd have been like, "Well, I had a good dinner and everybody's healthy." I mean, he did, but the idea of who am I and am I fulfilled? And it was I work and I survive. And my parents came out from people who they survived and they had a little bit more. And so I still had that you worked for things. But I think one of the things that is hard for a lot of Gen Z is they don't understand or have any connection to the idea of survival,
Yeah,
right? And
Mhm.
that's
so they have
exactly
a
it. And they
We
don't.
have to live, not so. It's interesting because I remember like I don't remember the person like off the top of my head, but they basically argued that like natural, if you're an evolutionist, they argued that like natural selection, like it's no longer a thing because humans no longer have to survive; they just have to live because of like the
well, right
commodities that
now they don't,
us by
but that
by
can
modern
change.
life.
No,
Hmm.
I
But the
believe that.
thing
And
is, but you're talking about people
Hmm.
searching for when your
Hmm.
purpose is to make sure you get a meal every day and have a house over your head, you
Hmm.
don't have a lot of time. Gen Z
Exactly.
has not they're now because of the economy, but they haven't had to survive, and I feel like they're looking
Hmm.
for a purpose. And because there is a rejection of
Yeah.
religion, which does give you a purpose, a
Hmm.
rejection of family, which gives you a purpose, a rejection of
Hmm.
children,
I
which
mean,
can
well, in
give
my
you a
case, my
purpose.
family rejects me, but
But so how do I find a purpose? Okay, well, I'm going to stand up for the oppressed,
and
right?
I think
I'm going to
and I think it's a vicious cycle, Terry, because when you're disconnected from that notion of survival, your mind becomes closed to hearing about somebody's experience with it because it becomes so foreign
Right.
to you that then you have no ability to empathize or understand what that means, and then it becomes a vicious cycle because then when you hear somebody else say, hey, you may have it tough, but I really had it tough, then
Mm-hmm.
they go on the defense. Fuck you, you don't
Yeah.
know me, you don't know me,
Yeah.
what I went through. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
cursing.
I used to be like that,
Yeah.
so
But
I get it.
so I think, and then there's that inability to engage and unwillingness to engage, and then both
Mm-hmm.
of those, it's a vicious cycle, and until you get to a point where you're totally disconnected even from thinking about, as you said, Terry, this disconnect causes this inability to look at the Holocaust in context and see how
Mm-hmm.
it relates to anything going on today. So that to me, it's really terrifying to me because
Mhm.
I think the Holocaust is
It
one of those
is.
things that I think everybody has to learn about. Not just here's the sequence of events, but what that
No.
meant for humanity, what it means
Yes.
about when it comes to human nature, and
Mm.
philosophically
Mm-hmm.
what it means. There's a lot to unpack there, and a
Yes.
lot of people in our generation don't want to do that. They don't want to
They
unpack
don't. Like, no, I've
Well, and
actually
I
sat
think
down. I've like dissected the Holocaust, like piece by piece, and it scared me more and more. Like, honestly, Terry, it's funny because it's like me learning about the Holocaust. It's like it drove me further and further into Christianity because I further and further like gave into the concept that humans are just totally depraved.
well, it's that thing of how did and I always said this growing up, and I studied a lot in World War II because my grandfather was in it. Is every millions of people in Germany, and you've got a short, dark-haired man up there screaming about the superior blonde race, and nobody raised their hand and was like, hold on a minute. And what's ironic now and amazing
Mhm.
is that the pro Hamas people claim that Ashkenazi Jews, well, they're all blonde hair and blue eyes. Well, they weren't blonde hair and blue eyed enough for Hitler, guys.
and
They were
So,
not blonde hair
you
and
know,
blue eyed enough for Hitler.
and
Terry,
they
it's so weird to me because it's like it's so ridiculous to me because like I see that I thought the same thing. Like I literally see this man preaching about the superior race with blonde hair and blue eyes. No, I was like, did nobody just raise their hand like, excuse me, sir?
yeah,
Do you
hey,
know what you look like, right?
but
and
it
that
tell yeah,
But
it
it tells
tells
you
you.
it's like people can be like so brainwashed that they won't even like say or they won't sometimes they won't even like notice things like that
because
and
you
it's
know what,
crazy to
I
me.
think Gen Z, when they hear about the Holocaust, they think of it like it's a hypothetical situation of where supervillains were in. These aren't
These were not
supervillains.
supervillains, these were
These are
human
people
No.
beings.
just like you and I who got taken over by a horrific ideology.
Mhm.
And
Well,
any of it.
and the thing is, it's yes, you set up an enemy, which is what they're doing now with
Yep.
Israel and with white people, right? That's what's happening. But it's also the I for Gen Z to be a generation I hear constantly talk about empathy. The lack of empathy is disturbing, and I'm not exaggerating. There are comments and things that people say, and I'm like, it is your lack of empathy is disturbing.
Like no,
And
like I'll
I,
joke about things, but I know that there's a line. Like even me, because like no Terry, because like I joke about like picking cotton, and like I joke about that. But then like even like my friend will make like a 9/11 joke, and I'm like, okay, no, actually, shut up. That's actually not funny. And they're like, but you were just
well,
joking about slavery, and I'm like, yeah, but no, I'm actually black. I wasn't in 9/11.
Well, there are people
well, I
today
think
that
the
lost
thing
loved
is,
ones to
Hmm.
9/11.
Exactly, yeah.
Nobody
yeah,
I'm
today
about to
is.
say yeah. Nobody alive came from a slave, and I was about to say, and I'm actually black, and I'm
well, it,
like, come on now.
I, I think the thing is too when you look at and I did a video. We'll have to show it one night, Chris, but. They were talking about that the millennial or Gen X and Boomers have lead poisoning, and that made us stupid. Of course, overall it lowered the IQ point by 2.7 points, so it's not really relevant.
Well,
But
I'm
people
smart,
who are
so I'm
more
good.
exposed to it, it can cause brain damage and an inability to regulate your emotions, and there's different side effects from it. And so these kids were talking about their parents, and they're like, they were horrible parents because they had lead poisoning, and so they're this, that, and blah, 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 and I hate them. And I'm thinking, so you just said, I realized this person was poisoned. They have brain damage and cannot help how they behave. And I'm angry at them because they don't have empathy for me, that it's difficult for me to deal with them. But you have no empathy. for the person who suffered the injury. And that's that. And I'm like, that lack of self-awareness, and in, like you said, it's not empathy. Empathy is a one-on-one connection to understand somebody else's feelings. This is false outrage of, this is how I would feel if this happened to
Well,
me.
I've seen.
Look at me.
And
Hear me
it's so
out here.
weird, Chris, because even among my generation, like I see the way like some people my age act, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen more empathy from people diagnosed with ASPD. That is ridiculous.
Well, here's the thing: people don't know what empathy is, because I've seen leftists who say that I've seen this on TikTok. They say I have empathy, but I don't have empathy for conservatives because they're bad people.
So you don't have empathy.
Here's what I'd say: anybody can have empathy for somebody that's exactly like them.
Exactly.
Anybody can. Even people who are really low EQ can have empathy for somebody that's very similar to them. The test of whether you have empathy is whether you can be in someone else's shoes who you can't normally relate to. That's the test of what empathy is.
Like, I mean, I can relate to leftists because I used to be one, but I'm no longer one. I can still relate to them, and I understand like why they believe the things that they do, even though I disagree.
Well, I think there's an association that empathy is associated with a sense of justice or rightness, and it's not necessarily. Here's the thing: I have empathy for the people of Palestine, for the parents who are losing children, who have lost their homes. I do. I look at these pictures and it breaks my heart, and I think it's sad. That doesn't mean I think Israel is wrong, and I understand that it's a war, right? I can look at it I can have empathy for somebody who commits suicide, who self-harms and wants to hurt themselves and realize they're in pain. That doesn't mean that I think they should be able to commit suicide.
Also, if we really wanted all these Palestinian civilians to be killed, then we would like Hamas, because they're the ones who are enabling it to happen by the way they're.
Yeah, like no, seriously, that's what I tell people. It's like if I really didn't feel bad for Palestinians, I would support Hamas because they're doing things that are actively getting Palestinians in danger.
You'd be pro-Israel but indifferent on Hamas, like the fact.
Well, I know people like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when I think of the Palestinian civilians being bombed, it renews my vigor in how much I think Hamas has to be destroyed. That's part of the reason we're so fired up. So, yeah, absolutely, empathy is a big issue. So I think guys, that about.
But again, this generation wears empathy like it's a badge.
Yeah.
Look, I'm empathetic, but only to people that I agree with. My sister said today, some guy posted online who's a writer, and he was like, I will stand with I'm tolerant and accepting of everybody. Everybody has a right to believe and be themselves. I stand with the LGBT community, and I will kill any Christian who tries to what? Literally, that was the post.
I think you pronounced Muslim wrong. I think you pronounced Muslim wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But also Terry, even adding on to that, it's so weird because like going back to what we said about like the Israel Palestine thing, like I tell people, if I did like truly like not care about Palestinians, I wanted them all dead, I would support Hamas because they are enabling that to happen. Like remember, like the Hamas leader's son, he said to themselves like, "Hey, don't support Hamas. They don't care about you. Their children are not in Gaza. Yours are. They will use your children as meat shields."
Yeah.
So I think guys, this shed some light that I think was really great on where this divide comes from, because I had that hypothesis that was all based on Brown versus not, but I think we had a great talk about other things such as empathy, the disconnect from the past, and I think all of these are really good explanations for why there's this double standard of the left being anti-Christianity but pro-Islam. And I think we had a great discussion. Is there anything else anybody wants to add?
No, I really think. I mean, I agree with you. I think this just comes down to race, and the idea
it's a race-based
I'm
thing.
Self-righteous because I'm standing up for people who are viewed as traditionally oppressive. Because if you look, Christianity in Western civilization is closer to what woke people claim they want, which is equality, which is peace, which is acceptance, which is tolerance, which is respect for all races. And yet they will constantly criticize those. But if you look at Middle Eastern culture and you look at Islam, there is not peace, there is not tolerance, there is violence, there is patriarchy, there is oppression, there is racism.
That there's no other criteria by which they would choose Islam over Christianity if it weren't for some unrelated factor like race and skin color. Yeah.
It can't be, because again, Islam is counterintuitive. Middle Eastern culture is counter to everything they claim that they stand for.
And by the way, notice
Everything.
we didn't say, we said Middle Eastern culture. We didn't say brown skin.
Exactly.
No, just
Which is
where
weird
we-
because I know why they sympathize with Muslims so much, because they have brown skin. They're like, oh well, brown people are traditionally seen as oppressed here, so we're going to see with an oppressor for somebody who's oppressed for brownie points, even though they're actually an oppressor. But
that's because they view everything through the lens of America.
Yeah,
Arabs
exactly.
are not a traditionally oppressed group in their part of the world. They're the
They're- yeah.
oppressor in their part of the world. But
Exactly.
again, it goes back to race. Everything
Like, no, I'm
is about
serious.
skin
Like,
color.
to all these like woke teenagers, I dare you to go anywhere in the Middle East and tell somebody that Arabs are oppressed, and they watch them. They will laugh right in your face.
Yeah, no, they're not. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think we've proven, Chris, that the woke agenda is basically a racist agenda.
It is. It's not basically
and
racist. It is racist.
Well, there again, if you look at ideologies and you look at the implementation of them, there is no way they should be supporting Islamist radical societies. Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, guys, I want to thank you all for the conversation. And again, this is Chris. I also want to give Terry a shout out. Follow her on TikTok. It's now her only remaining account. Awesome Sweet Tea. And I'll put Ravens on the screen too. I just forget what the numerical.
Don't follow him. He's crazy. No.
I'm not crazy.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what a
Well,
crazy
now you're
person would say.
oppressed. Okay.
Anyway, thanks,
All
guys.
right.
We appreciate you watching.
All right.
Wait,
Thanks, Chris.
before
We'll
we
see you guys
go,
next week.
everyone, this is really important. Submit to Rome. Anyways,
And
bye,
you
everyone.
just- Cut that out. Do not put that in there.
No, seriously, Chris, don't put that in there. Please don't put that in there.
Okay.